All right, now part 3. We just left off on Wordsworth. I just have to find. Okay, there we go. Oh, it's something about Wordsworth. He wrote Tintern Nutting, and Lucy Gray. Cultural and historical trends. You want to know the general outline for the Age of Romanticism? Okay, so the French Revolution. Let me just go over the Romantic era timeline then. I had it up here. Where is it? Okay, let's see. Okay, here we go. It's in week 1. Timeline. So, 1786, Robert Burns' Book of Poems, chiefly the Scottish dialect appears. Chiefly in the Scottish dialect appears. So that's dialect. That's Robert Burns, Scottish dialect, 1786. 1787, the rise of the abolition movement in Britain. 1789, Blake's Songs of Innocence appears. 1789, July 14th, 1789 is the storming of the Bastille. 1793 to 1794, the Terror, the Reign of the Terror. 1793, France declares war on Great Britain. 1794, Blake's Songs of Experience. 1798, Woolridge and Coleridge published lyrical ballads, launching the Romantic movement. So that really launched the Romantic movement. The famous preface was added in the 1800 edition. 1790, so that's the Laker movement. 1799 to 1800, Combination Acts forbid workers from gathering for collective bargaining. Essentially, these acts make trade unions illegal in Great Britain. 1800, the Act of Union unites Ireland and Great Britain into one kingdom known as the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Note, Great Britain itself already included England, Scotland, and Wales. 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte crowns himself Emperor of France. 1806 to 1807, the Slave Trade Act made the slave trade illegal in British law, aka suppression of the slave trade. 1811 to 1820, Regency period. King George III declared insane. The Crown Prince rules as regent until George III dies. Good to know. 1812, disillusioned by political developments, Anna Barbald publishes her final poem, 1811. 1813, Robert Southey becomes the poet laureate. When he dies in 1843, he's succeeded by William Wordsworth. 1815, Napoleon is defeated in the Battle of Waterloo, end of the Napoleonic Wars. 1816, Leigh Hunt writes an article identifying some important new young poets, including Shelley and Keats. 1817, the term lake school is first applied to Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Southey. It's Southey, not Salvey. Southey. 1818, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein appears. Same year, Lord Byron begins writing Don Juan. 1819, Peterloo Massacre. The same year, the repressive 6 Acts are passed. John Keats, in 1819, writes a number of his most famous poems, including Ode to a Grecian Urn and To Autumn. In 1821, Keats dies of tuberculosis, which is consumption. In 1822, Percy Shelley dies of an accident. 1824, Byron dies while aiding Greek revolutionaries. 1824, Combination Acts repealed. 1829, the Catholic Emancipation Act is passed. British Catholics can now hold public offices. 1832, Reform Act extends the franchise to more middle-class men. 1833, the Abolition Act is passed, requiring the abolition of slavery in British colonies. Ta-da! Okay, so there's that. So now, going back to my lovely... Okay, so here we go. The French Revolution. How did the French Revolution influence Romanticism? Generally, how did it affect British culture? In early stages of the French Revolution, the first generation of writers, most especially Wordsworth and Wollstonecraft and Thomas Paine, were and Thomas Paine, who was not a Romantic poet, were extremely, let me write that down. Thomas Paine, not a Romantic, we're extremely hopeful that extremely idealistic changes were underway that would pave the way for more civil rights and liberties for everyone. The monarchists became increasingly paranoid as the revolution raged on and the Reign of Terror began. As the Reign of Terror came to live up to its name and the Napoleon rose to power in France, became a massive threat to England and all the English colonies as well, nationalism took over and the government came down on anyone who could be perceived as conspiring to any form of sedition. The impact that this had on British culture was it put a lid on radical thinking because anything that threatened the monarchy was prescribed as punishable by treason. The older generation of romantics became more conservative, and as the revolution turned into the Napoleonic Wars, because it became clear that mob rule had turned into military rule being run by tyrannical despot, which was the furthest thing any of them had imagined or hoped for emerging from the Revolution. The Napoleonic Wars kept England locked in a battle across the globe for more than a decade, which left England in a horrible state economically. The horrible poverty of the lower classes became one of the common themes of Romantic literature. Also of interest, Mary Wollstonecraft wrote her essay on the rights of women in response to Paine's essay on the rights of men, as she intended it to make an impact on the marginalization of women imposed by Rousseau's ideal that women should be at home breastfeeding their children, not standing on equal footing with men in the world of politics. What was Peterloo? Roughly when did it occur? August 16th, 1819. August 16th, 1819. Peterloo was a massacre that happened after Waterloo, and it was an incident where the British military moved in and massacred peaceful demonstrations standing up for unity and civil rights. The right to vote and the removal of the Corn Laws, which had vastly depleted the supply of bread for the common people. Mostly women and children were killed, but hundreds were trampled, stabbed and wounded by a military squad that arrived to terrorize and disperse them. Shelley poem, footnote, reference to massacre on Petersfield in August 5th, 1819. Which poem was it? We need to know that. Oh well, I'll find that out later. Be aware of the impact of the Industrial Revolution. The adoption of new technologies, reorganization of employment, and the shift in power from the monarchy to the institutions of modern liberal state revolutionized people's work, family life, etc., civic duty and leisure in the Victorian era. This led to a shift in the way that people understood themselves as individuals in relation to their society. Victorian tended to think of identity in terms of oppositions, male, female, black, white, homosexual, heterosexual. They challenged these fixed categories. Okay. What were the effects of the Napoleonic Wars? Romanticism was partially in response to French cultural domination during the Napoleonic Wars. Both the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars served as a backdrop for the Romantic movement, both of which played a central role in shaping the Romantic period. The French Revolution gave liberals, authors, and artists and intellectuals the promise of greater equality and better government, as well as freedom in general. However, the revolution failed, disillusioned many of the intellectuals of the time and making them rethink their political views and become more conservative. However, the revolution and the time that came immediately after it allowed the countries of England, Wales, and Scotland and Ireland to come together as one nation, Great Britain. Great Britain. Okay. What major signs of progress occurred at the end of the Romanticism? Start of the Victorian period. The Whig Party ultimately took over Parliament, which ushered in huge reforms for the common man at the tipping point where if they hadn't made huge changes, more likely than not, England would have succumbed to a revolution as well. In 1824, they had the Combination Acts repealed. The act brought the hammer down on... The Combination Acts was an anti-union act, so that was repealed. In 1829, the Catholic Emancipation Act passed, allowing Catholics to hold office. In 1832, the Reform Act expanded voting rights for men and expanded political power for a wider spectrum of the population. And in 1833, there was the abolition of slavery.